My name is Alexandra Chen, and I never imagined my own mentor would try to destroy everything I had built. At 42 years old, I had finally reached the pinnacle of success in Silicon Valley. My startup Quantum Shield was revolutionizing cybersecurity with breakthrough encryption technology that I had spent 15 years developing. 7 venture capital firms had invested $80 million in our company. We were 6 months away from going public with a projected valuation of $1 billion. Everything was perfect. At least that was what I thought. I still remember the exact moment when my world started to unravel. It was a Tuesday morning in April. The California sun was streaming through the windows of our sleek office in Palo Alto. I had arrived early as usual, 6:30 in the morning to be exact. The office was empty and quiet, just how I liked it. Those peaceful morning hours were when I did my best thinking. I was reviewing our quarterly financial reports when I noticed something strange. A series of unexplained server access logs from unusual hours. 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, times when no one should have been working. What made it more suspicious was that the access came from Marcus Blackwell's credentials. Marcus was my mentor, my business partner, the man who had guided my career for nearly 2 decades, the person I trusted most in the cutthroat world of tech. I told myself there must be a reasonable explanation. Marcus often worked unusual hours. He probably had insomnia again. He had mentioned having trouble sleeping lately. I almost closed the log file and moved on. Almost. But something felt wrong. A knot formed in my stomach. An intuition born from years of navigating the treacherous waters of Silicon Valley. I decided to dig deeper. I pulled up more logs, created a pattern analysis of server access times and file permissions. What I found made my blood run cold. Someone using Marcus's credentials had been accessing our most sensitive proprietary algorithms, the core technology that made Quantum Shield revolutionary. But they weren't just viewing the files. They were copying them, downloading them, and the destination IP addresses traced back to servers in Shanghai. I felt physically ill. My hands trembled as I stared at my computer screen. This couldn't be happening. Not Marcus. He had been my professor at Stanford, had believed in me when no one else did, had invested his own money in my company when venture capitalists laughed at the idea of a woman leading a cybersecurity startup. He was like a father to me. I needed more evidence. Perhaps his account had been hacked. Yes, that had to be it. Someone had compromised his credentials. I would investigate discreetly, then alert him once I had confirmation. I created a shadow monitoring system that would track all activity from his account without triggering any notifications. Then I went about my day as if nothing had happened. For the next 2 weeks, I maintained a perfect facade. I smiled during our executive meetings, laughed at Marcus's jokes over lunch, discussed expansion plans for our Tokyo office. All while, my heart was breaking as the evidence mounted. The server logs showed a clear pattern. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, someone using Marcus's credentials accessed our servers from his home IP address, downloaded critical files, and transmitted them to the same location in China. I needed to know who was receiving our intellectual property. I traced the Shanghai IP address through a series of proxies and virtual private networks, finally uncovered its true destination. Huang Tech Enterprises, one of China's largest technology conglomerates. A company that had recently announced a new cybersecurity platform with capabilities suspiciously similar to our own. The final piece clicked into place. My mentor was selling our technology to foreign competitors. But why? What could possibly motivate Marcus to betray everything we had built together? The answer came when I dug into his personal finances. Marcus had made a series of catastrophic investments 3 years ago, lost nearly $30 million in a cryptocurrency scheme. He was desperate for money, and our technology was worth hundreds of millions on the international market. I remember sitting alone in my office late that night, the skyline of Palo Alto twinkling through my window, tears streaming down my face. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. This man had been my mentor, my friend, had walked me down the aisle at my wedding when my own father refused to attend because he thought I should be a doctor, not a tech entrepreneur. Marcus had been family to me, And now he was destroying everything I had worked for. I allowed myself exactly 1 hour to grieve, 60 minutes to feel the pain, the anger, the confusion. Then I dried my tears and began to plan. Because if there's one thing Silicon Valley had taught me, it was that sentiment had no place in business. And this was now business. The next morning I arrived at the office with a clear strategy. I would not confront Marcus immediately, would not alert him that I knew of his betrayal. Instead, I would gather more evidence, build an airtight case, and most importantly, I would ensure he could never claim the intellectual property as his own. I started by quietly securing our most critical assets, filed emergency patents under my name for components we had planned to patent jointly, moved development servers to a new security protocol that limited his access, created backup copies of all our research. I worked through nights and weekends, sleeping only 4 hours a night, fueled by determination and betrayal. 3 weeks into my investigation, I made another troubling discovery. Marcus wasn't working alone. Our CFO James Sullivan was helping him. The financial transfers were being disguised as consulting fees to shell companies. Nearly $6 million had been funneled to Marcus through these fraudulent transactions. Money that should have been going toward our expansion. The scope of the betrayal was expanding. How many others were involved? I couldn't trust anyone at the company now. I needed an ally, someone outside our organization with the skills to help me navigate this crisis. That's when I thought of Olivia Rodriguez. Olivia and I had been rivals for years. We graduated from Stanford the same year, both built cybersecurity companies, competed for the same contracts and venture funding. The press loved to pit us against each other as the two most powerful women in Silicon Valley security. What the press didn't know was that behind the public rivalry, we had developed a grudging respect for each other. We weren't friends exactly, but we understood each other in a way that only women fighting the same battles could. I called Olivia and asked to meet at a small coffee shop in Mountain View, far from our usual haunts where we might be recognized. When she arrived, I could see the surprise in her eyes. I looked terrible, had lost weight, dark circles under my eyes from weeks of sleepless nights spent gathering evidence. I told Olivia I needed her help with a sensitive matter, that I couldn't provide details yet, but it involved corporate espionage at the highest levels. She studied me carefully, then agreed to hear me out. For the next 2 hours, I laid out everything I had discovered. The server logs, the money trail, the connection to Huang Tech. When I finished, Olivia was silent for a long moment. Olivia said she would help me, not just out of professional courtesy, but because what Marcus was doing threatened the integrity of the entire industry. She said that if executives could sell American innovation to foreign competitors with impunity, then Silicon Valley itself was at risk. She offered her company's resources and her personal expertise. With Olivia's help, I expanded my investigation. Her team provided specialized forensic tools that allowed me to recover deleted files from our company's servers. What we found shocked even me. Marcus had been selling our intellectual property for over 18 months. Not just to Huang Tech, but to companies in Russia and Iran as well. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. More troubling was what the recovered files revealed about Marcus's ultimate plan. He was systematically building a case to frame me for the very crimes he was committing. Had created falsified emails showing me negotiating with foreign entities, doctored financial records indicating I had received the payments. He was setting me up to take the fall when the inevitable investigation began. I felt a cold fury unlike anything I had experienced before. This was no longer just about betrayal. This was calculated destruction of my life and reputation. Marcus wasn't just stealing from me. He was planning to destroy me completely. Now I understood the timetable. In approximately 6 weeks, we would begin the formal process for our initial public offering. The scrutiny of our financials would eventually reveal the irregularities. Marcus would express shock and concern, would produce his fabricated evidence pointing to me as the culprit. By then, it would be too late for me to defend myself. My reputation would be destroyed. My career over, possibly facing federal charges for selling sensitive technology to foreign adversaries. I needed to accelerate my plan. With Olivia's help, I reached out to an old college friend who now worked for the FBI's cybercrime division. We met at her home on a Sunday afternoon. I brought copies of all the evidence we had gathered: server logs, financial records, communication patterns, the fabricated evidence against me that Marcus had created. The FBI agent listened carefully, said this was exactly the kind of case they were prioritizing. Corporate espionage and technology transfer to foreign entities represented a serious national security concern. She would open an official investigation but cautioned me that these cases were complex. Building a federal case would take time. Time I didn't have. I returned to the office on Monday with a new determination. I would need to handle this myself while the FBI built their case. I began to construct an elaborate counter-strategy. If Marcus could fabricate evidence, then so could I. But I wouldn't be creating fiction. I would be creating a trap. First, I needed to understand exactly who at the company was involved. I created a series of digital breadcrumbs, different pieces of seemingly valuable but actually meaningless technology information with subtle variations. I placed these files in locations that specific executives could access. Then I monitored which versions showed up in the data being transmitted to China. Through this method, I identified 3 more executives involved in the conspiracy: our head of product development, our chief security officer, and most painfully, our head of legal affairs, who had been with me since the company's founding. Now I knew who my enemies were. The next phase was to feed them exactly what I wanted while preparing my counterattack. I created a special version of our core algorithm, one that appeared functional in all tests but contained a hidden failsafe that would render it useless when deployed at scale. I made this poisoned version accessible to Marcus and his conspirators. As expected, they took the bait, transmitted the compromised code to their Chinese partners. Meanwhile, I was preparing for the final confrontation. I reached out to our largest investors individually, requested emergency meetings away from the office. One by one, I presented them with evidence of what was happening. Most were shocked. 2 were skeptical until I showed them the financial trails. 1 already suspected something was wrong but hadn't known what. All agreed to support my next moves. I also contacted 3 members of our board who weren't aligned with Marcus, showed them what I had discovered. Their reactions ranged from outrage to disbelief to calculated assessment of how this would affect the company's valuation. 2 immediately pledged their support. The third needed more convincing but eventually agreed that Marcus had to be removed. The pieces were in place. Now I needed the right moment to spring my trap. That opportunity came sooner than expected. Marcus called an emergency executive meeting for a Thursday afternoon. All senior leadership was required to attend. When I arrived at the conference room, I immediately sensed something was wrong. Marcus looked too confident, too pleased with himself. The conspirators exchanged subtle glances. My instinct screamed danger. Marcus began the meeting by expressing grave concerns about financial irregularities he had discovered. He spoke solemnly about his commitment to corporate governance and ethical business practices. I watched in fascination as he built his case piece by piece. He was a master performer. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed him myself. Finally, he reached his conclusion. He had evidence that someone in this room had been selling our proprietary technology to foreign competitors, had been accepting millions in illegal payments. The board had been notified. An emergency investigation was underway. Then he turned to me with false regret in his eyes. Marcus said he had evidence that I was the one responsible. That financial records showed transfers to offshore accounts in my name. That server logs indicated I had been accessing and transmitting sensitive files. He expressed personal devastation at this discovery, said he had always thought of me as a daughter, felt betrayed by my actions. The room was silent. All eyes turned to me. For a moment, I allowed myself to appear shocked, confused. I could see the satisfaction in Marcus's eyes, the belief that he had won, that I was caught unprepared. I let him savor that moment briefly before I destroyed him. I smiled, a small, calm smile that visibly unsettled him. I said I found the timing of this meeting interesting, asked if I could respond to these allegations. Marcus nodded, magnanimously confident in his position. I opened my laptop and connected it to the conference room display. First, I showed the real server logs, the ones showing Marcus's persistent access at unusual hours, the data transfers to Chinese servers, the financial trails to his hidden accounts. I methodically dismantled his fabricated evidence against me, demonstrated how he had created false timestamps and digital signatures. As I presented my evidence, I could see the conspirators growing increasingly uncomfortable. Marcus attempted to interrupt several times, but I continued calmly. I explained that I had been aware of his activities for weeks, had been gathering evidence and building a case. Then I revealed my final move. I announced that 10 minutes before this meeting began, the FBI had executed search warrants at Marcus's home and the homes of his 4 co-conspirators, that federal agents were currently seizing servers and financial records, that I had been working with them to build a case against an international corporate espionage ring with ties to foreign governments. The color drained from Marcus's face. He stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair, accused me of lying, of fabricating evidence, threatened to sue me for defamation. I remained perfectly calm. Then the conference room doors opened. 2 FBI agents entered, followed by 3 board members and our largest investor. The lead FBI agent confirmed that they were investigating Marcus Blackwell and several other executives for selling controlled technology to foreign entities, for wire fraud, for conspiracy against the United States. Then our largest investor stepped forward, announced that the board had held an emergency session that morning, had voted to remove Marcus as CEO effective immediately, that I would be assuming full control of the company pending the resolution of the federal investigation. Marcus looked around the room desperately, saw nothing but hostile or averted eyes. His carefully constructed plan was collapsing around him. In a final desperate move, he turned to me, said I was making a terrible mistake, that he could explain everything if we spoke privately, that there were larger forces at work that I didn't understand. I looked at my former mentor, the man who had guided my career, who had been like family to me. I felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only a profound sadness for what could have been. I told him he would have ample opportunity to explain himself to federal prosecutors. Then I asked the FBI agents to escort him and the other conspirators from the building. The next few weeks were the most challenging of my professional life. The news of the arrests made international headlines. Silicon Valley espionage ring uncovered. Top executives arrested for selling secrets to China. Our stock price plummeted, then stabilized as investors gained confidence in my leadership. I worked 20-hour days managing the crisis while keeping our product development on track. The FBI investigation expanded beyond Quantum Shield, revealed a vast network of corporate espionage throughout Silicon Valley. Executives at 5 other major tech companies were implicated. Marcus had been part of a sophisticated operation run by Chinese intelligence services, had recruited others throughout the industry. The scandal rocked the technology sector to its core. Throughout this period, Olivia remained my steadfast ally. Our former rivalry transformed into a powerful partnership. Her company helped us secure our systems and rebuild our security protocols. We began discussing a potential merger that would create the largest cybersecurity firm in the world, a female-led powerhouse that would redefine the industry. 3 months after Marcus's arrest, I received a call from the lead FBI investigator. They had uncovered something disturbing during their investigation, something that explained Marcus's comment about larger forces at work. The Chinese operation was only part of the story. Marcus had also been working with a consortium of Silicon Valley power brokers, established tech giants who saw our innovation as a threat to their market dominance. They had facilitated the foreign connections, had promised to help Marcus rebuild after my downfall with even greater resources. This revelation shifted my understanding of Silicon Valley itself. The meritocracy I believed in was a fraud, a system designed to maintain power for an established elite while creating the illusion of opportunity. My success had made me a Target not just for foreign competitors but for the very industry I had devoted my life to. 6 months after the arrests, I stood on stage at the National Cybersecurity Conference, accepted the award for Innovator of the Year. I looked out at the audience of industry leaders and government officials, saw respect in their eyes but also wariness. I had exposed the rot at the core of Silicon Valley, had survived an attempt to destroy me by the most powerful forces in technology, had emerged stronger and more influential than before. In my acceptance speech, I spoke about innovation and integrity, about the responsibility that comes with creating technology that protects critical infrastructure. But mostly I spoke about trust, how it must be earned and maintained, how easily it can be broken, how devastating the consequences can be. As I concluded my speech, I announced the formation of a new industry coalition, a partnership between my company and Olivia's, a group dedicated to ethical innovation and corporate governance, to protecting American intellectual property while fostering global collaboration, to creating a technology ecosystem built on trust rather than exploitation. Today, 1 year after discovering Marcus's betrayal, my company is stronger than ever. Our initial public offering was the most successful in Silicon Valley history. The stock price has tripled since our first day of trading. We've expanded into new markets across Europe and Asia, have established research centers in 5 countries, are developing the next generation of security technology that will protect critical systems worldwide. Marcus and his co-conspirators await trial on federal charges, face decades in prison if convicted. The broader investigation has led to regulatory reforms throughout the technology sector, new protections for intellectual property, greater scrutiny of foreign investments, a fundamental reassessment of how technology companies operate. I still think about Marcus sometimes, wonder when he changed from the principled mentor I admired to the man who tried to destroy me. Whether it was gradual corruption or if he had always been capable of such betrayal, I may never know the answer. Have accepted that as one of the costs of my success. What I do know is that his betrayal transformed me, forced me to recognize the harsh realities of power and ambition, to understand that in Silicon Valley and perhaps in life itself, trust must always be balanced with vigilance, that even those closest to us can be motivated by forces we don't fully comprehend. I no longer view business as separate from personal values. Recognize that the technology we create reflects our deepest priorities and beliefs. That innovation without integrity is ultimately destructive. That success built on betrayal is no success at all. My name is Alexandra Chen. I am 43 years old. I run one of the most valuable technology companies in the world. My story is both a warning and a promise, a testament to the darkness that can exist in the pursuit of power and the light that comes from remaining true to your principles even when facing destruction. I often wonder how many others have faced similar betrayals in their professional lives, have discovered that those they trusted most were undermining them for personal gain, have had to rebuild not just their careers but their understanding of human nature itself. What would you do if the mentor you trusted most became your greatest enemy? How would you respond to such a fundamental betrayal? And what would that response reveal about who you truly are?